All right. Well, I want to just say welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this HBCU Cybersecurity Roundtable. We are thrilled to have you here. My name is Mary Beth Gassman, and I am a professor at Rutgers University. I also have the pleasure of serving as the executive director of the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions, which is one of the sponsors of today's event, along with the Fordham Center for Cybersecurity. So we are very excited to have everyone here. We've got an amazing panel of experts. And so I'm just gonna go over who our experts are today, and then I'm gonna hand it over to our moderator for the day. We are pleased to be joined by Amelia Estwick, who is the co-chair of Cybersecurity Education of the Cybersecurity Education Diversity Initiative, and Amelia will be our moderator today. Hayajneh, who is the founder and director of the Fordham Center for Cybersecurity. Renee Weathers, who is the NCAE-C program director for NSA National Cryptologic University. Cherese Winstead, who is the Dean of the College of Agriculture, Science, and Technology at Delaware State University. Derrek Dunn, who is the Dean of the School of Business and Technology at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And Dennis Seguer, who is a professor of computer science at Dillard University. Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have you with us. And Renee, my apologies, Amelia, I am handing it over to you.
So thank you. Had to see the mute button there. I'm really glad to be joining this panel. I am really fortunate to be speaking with everyone today. This is really going to be an exciting discussion about cybersecurity education and diversity, and how we can not only grow, sustain, and maintain just a wonderful pipeline of cybersecurity professionals, but how can we reach down into the academia and support our students and our faculty in making sure we have a strong workforce in cybersecurity. So I'm really excited to be here. Again, my name is Amelia Estwick. I am actually an HBCU alum. I am a Jaguar Nation, Southern University. I earned my bachelor's degree in computer information from Southern University at New Orleans. And then I went on to pursue my graduate degrees in computer science from the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm located. So I wanted to say hello to everybody and happy spring. So what was the importance of this initiative? Really, it grew out of the need we saw, as my co-chair will speak about in a little bit, the need we saw in our minority serving institutions, especially our HBCUs, on not having the resources needed to educate and to provide development for their faculty in this growing field. And we, Dr. Hayajneh and I sat down and we discussed. He said, you know what, we're part of the Centers of Academic Excellence. And what this means is it's a community that is built on supporting cybersecurity, and not only two-year institutions and four-year institutions and beyond, right, workforce development, but also supporting all the way in the K through 12 pipeline. And we were seeing that schools that were getting what we call CAE designated, that's where you have a cybersecurity program that has matured, and you're matriculating students through those programs, and they're getting their degrees in cybersecurity. And we realized only a handful were actually MSIs, and even a smaller handful were HBCUs. So Dr. Hayajneh and I sat together and we said, okay, what can we do here? So all of this effort was actually grew out of a working group that we started with the Centers of Academic Excellence. So I'm going to allow my co-chair, Thayer, to speak more about CEDI. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Estwick, for the introduction. And I want to thank all our esteemed panel with us here today. Also, special thanks to Rutgers University and their Center for Minority Serving Institution to help us. They are our partners and for working with us to host this event today. And also want to thank our funding agency, the National Security Agency, for funding the CEDI program through the Centers of Academic Excellence Program Office. without their fund and support, we wouldn't have been able to start CEDI. So CEDI started about 2.5 years ago as an initiative to really help minority serving institutions either establishing new cybersecurity programs or expand and enhance their existing programs. And we were fortunate over the past 2.5 years almost to work with hundreds of MSIs. So far, CEDI up to date has served almost 100 MSI through the different services that we will discuss later today. And of course, we wouldn't have been able to do this work without the help and support of all the institutions that work with us. These are we call them the CAE designated institutions. These are the institutions that were designated as centers of academic excellence. So us at CEDI, we orchestrated the work, we organized, we connected things together, and the actual work was done with those CAE institutions. We started with 9 partners with us, and then we expanded, and the entire CAE community were excited actually to work with us. They were very eager to help minority serving institutions improve cybersecurity programs or establishing new programs. So in our initial discussions with the hundreds of MSIs that we worked with so far, we identified a few areas of challenges and through our observations. And to name few of these challenges, and they are common among other institutions, but in MSIs, they are more severe. For example, the first challenge we noticed when we worked with MSI is the lack of infrastructure. Things that are obvious in other institutions, labs and software and hardware and access to cloud and VMware, these are not by default available at those institutions. In many cases, they suffer the lack of that basic infrastructure. We noticed even one of the HBCUs, they have a program in cybersecurity that they end up closing that program because they didn't even have a single hands-on lab or exercise for their students. And as you are aware, with cybersecurity, it's very challenging to teach students without hands-on lab. It's just like graduating nurses without being able to see a single patient in their life. So hands-on and lab exercise are essential components with cybersecurity. The lack of resources for their students is another challenge we noticed. During COVID, as you are aware, most of the institutions worked remotely. Some of these institutions needed a special permission for their students to be able to access their labs, just because the assumption that all the students have broadband internet access, high-speed internet access at their home, or even high computing power for their laptop or desktop, where they will be able to install virtual machines and other tools, is not available for many of those students at MSIs. So also the assumption of these resources for these students is not available for MSI students. Some institutions also, their faculty complain that they don't have enough support from their higher administrative, from their deans, from their provosts, from their presidents. When they ask for more resources, labs, hiring for their cybersecurity, their higher administrative, they don't really understand the importance of cybersecurity or the opportunities that would come to their institution if they establish a new program, the funding, the scholarship, the other opportunities that could happen to their students if they establish a strong cybersecurity program. Another challenge, which is common across the board in our nation right now, is the lack of qualified faculty. If we think other institutions have that problem to hire and retain faculty, it's even much harder for MSIs. Of course, because they cannot provide as competitive package as other institutions. Just a quick example, I speak to one of my colleagues at one of the research universities. They offer a huge package, up to almost $1 million or $500,000 of startup fund to their new hired faculty. I don't think that's even close or anything close to that any MSI can offer to their new hired faculty. So they have a challenge when they compete with faculty compared to other institutions. And last but not least, also in many cases, those MSIs, they feel that they are excluded from lots of opportunities and grants, because grants by nature, for example, the scholarship for service and other NSF or DoD grants, they have to review thoroughly the applicants. They look into their existing resources, and with all the lack of resources and challenges I just mentioned, they make them less competitive. They made MSIs less competitive compared to other institutions. So by default, their chances to get DC grants is much and much less. I don't want to talk a lot here, but I want to give the opportunity to Amelia to run this panel, and I would like to hear from our panelists later on their thoughts about these challenges that I just mentioned. Do they agree with them? Do they think there are additional ones that I didn't mention? So Amelia, the mic is back to you, and thank you.
So thank you, Thayer, for that, giving us a nice overview regards to the CEDI program. Again, you know, what we've seen is the challenges we've noted, and we built CEDI around addressing those challenges, the faculty development, student development. We talked about the curricula improvement so they can center around the Center of Academic Excellence knowledge units. We talked about mentorship and advisement for schools that want to try to get involved with the CAE community and get that, what we call the gold stamp of approval for cybersecurity education, as well as building articulation agreements between schools. Now, none of this would be possible if it wasn't for the support we received from the National Security Agency Centers of Academic Excellence. So with that, I want to bring on Ms. Renee Weathers, who's our NSA program director, to speak about just CAE in general, the CAE community, because I know this is a huge community where we have, I believe, over 400 schools. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Renee, but over 400 schools where those schools are classified as part of the Center of Academic Excellence community. And, you know, you talk about thousands of schools that we are still working across the spectrum to bring in the community. But out of the 400, still only a handful of MSIs. And this is what really was the impetus for us to try to grow and expand CAE community amongst amongst MSIs. So I'm sorry, Ms. Weathers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, how are you?
Oh,
everybody?
Great, how are you? So my question
I'm
to
fine.
you is, how do you see at the CAE community? Thank you.
So I want to just start off with, first and foremost, our NSA's goal was to identify and implement programs and initiatives to address the huge cybersecurity talent gap that's facing not only NSA, but our nation. So that was priority one. And the CEDI program is one of these initiatives that we implemented to address this gap, primarily for the MSIs and the HBCUs. And so you mentioned earlier kind of the impetus behind this program. One of us was it just grew out of the need. The CA office, program office, we're getting calls from presidents from universities, HBCUs and MSI universities asking for our help. And then once we received the funding from Congress. I believe Lynn was in a big meeting, and she mentioned some of the challenges that the HBCUs and MSIs were having with the program, and there was a lot of enthusiasm and just people willing to help. So basically, this program is from the need and the enthusiasm of all the help that we've been able to get, which we really appreciate. And one of the things that with the CAE office, by pairing up the CEDI program with the National Center of Excellence, some of our programs, we have 3 different designations, the schools. There's the cyber defense, the cyber operations, and cyber research. Cyber defense is the biggest. We have right now, combined with the different designations, over 400 schools designated. So with the help of all of the CEs that are helping to support the CEDI program, there's plenty of opportunities to have more HBCUs that want to get their designation to get the support that they need. There's plenty of help out there. There's mentoring and all different sorts of help available. So that was kind of our goal. The biggest goal was to just to remove those obstacles. We realize that building a cybersecurity program is not easy. And to be able to move those obstacles would come with building that program by putting mentors in place and opening the doors to participate in some of the different cyber challenges and so forth. So our goal right now is to continue to get as many MSIs and HBCUs designated, CAE designated, or if that's not the goal, to just build cybersecurity programs so we can get more, we can close this gap by getting more cybersecurity professionals.
Thank you, Ms. Weathers, for really speaking on that and having us to frame the importance, not only to National Security Agency, as you stated, but also it's a national imperative. It is a national imperative that we filled all of these unfilled jobs. So I did a little research right before coming into this meeting, looking at what jobs are available and what does it look like for us years from now, right? So when you go to things like the, labor, Bureau of Statistics of Labor, right? They give here that there are a number of jobs as of 2021, right? And these numbers fluctuate, but they tend still to be tens of thousands of jobs, over 160,000 jobs, right? If you go to CyberSeek, I don't know if you all are familiar with CyberSeek, it's kind of a heat map. This is kind of a research initiative that bore out of public and private industry that put together this heat map of jobs and where there is more supply than demand and vice versa. And here they had total cybersecurity job openings, over 750,000 jobs. So when we talk about workforce development, when we talk about educating our students, not only for the problems today, but to be able to address the problems of tomorrow. And we live in a digital world, information society, moving into now this AI society, right? We need our students to be properly prepared. We need our students to have the foundational knowledge, skills, and abilities coming from institutions to be able to compete, right, and go for these jobs. This is what we're talking about. And real quick, also, I'm looking at the average salary, median salary for an information security professional, which is what we tend to call, the Bureau of Labor Statistics call information security, but we say cybersecurity as kind of a catch-all term. Average salary, $102,000. So we're talking a real livable wage here, right? When we're in this society of inflation and talking about, wage disparities, here we are talking about a field with phenomenal growth that really we need to prepare our students for. So when Thea and I talked about the challenges, I want to hear from our panelists that we hear today, our leaders in academia. What do you see as a challenge? Do you believe the challenges we have in cybersecurity, the faculty development, lack of faculty development, lack of student development, the lack of resources, of infrastructure, do you still think they are relevant? And I'm going to throw this out to the panel, but maybe so we don't talk over each other, can I just should I go with names, or should we just try to open it out? I want to make sure, because I know there's some delay on some of the voice. I don't want folks to talk over each other. So I'm happy. If you raise your hand, maybe I call you. I'll do it that way. Is that a good way to do that? So we don't talk over each other. Okay, I'm gonna go with Dr. Dunn.
Well, thank you so much for the question. As discussed earlier, there are many challenges that are facing the HBCUs in terms of staffing, developing and staffing cybersecurity programs. How we are trying to address those at the University of Maryland Shore is partnering with industry and other R1 institutions who have established programs. For example, we have a partner with Microsoft Corporation that's given us quite a bit of funding to support our cybersecurity efforts. In addition to that, through that relationship, we are developing a relationship with Florida International University, which has a very strong cybersecurity program in terms of offering mentor-menteeships with their doctoral students being the mentors to our undergraduate students being the mentees, possible collaborations in terms of utilizing their coursework. FIU has a robust offering via online distance education. So utilizing those classes to augment the courses we offer, and then also develop partnerships between our faculty and their faculty for faculty development opportunities and possible joint research projects. So those are how some of the methods we're trying to use to help address the issues that surround, challenges that surround trying to staff up and run a proper cybersecurity program at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dunn. Dr. Segur.
Good afternoon. Yeah, here at Dillon University, we are, a very small private HBCU, so we have very little funding, and so the challenges are still relevant for us with the lack of resources. Resources meaning physical people, humans, material, equipment, and even the basic infrastructure to put on a cybersecurity program. So definitely, yes, it is a challenge that's still relevant to us.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I think it's important to note when we talk about infrastructure, we also got to really talk about the students that we're educating, this demographic. Like I said, I am a proud HBCU alum. And even though I started school at the kind of computers weren't as prevalent, so I'm not going to age myself here, but there were still some infrastructure challenges. And that was 30 years ago. And here we are still speaking about infrastructure challenges. Dr. Winstead, do you have anything to share?
Yes, so I echo the comments of my fellow HBCU colleagues. We have here, we struggle. So just like Thayer just mentioned, we have struggled with retaining faculty that have come in as cybersecurity faculty. So we were able to recruit at one point, we were able to recruit 2 faculty members in cybersecurity, but they were, influenced and it was attractive. Industry took one and then another larger R1 institution took the other. So it's very difficult for MSIs, HBCUs to remain competitive, even if we are successful in recruiting the professional, we're successful in retaining them. Right? So we have to stay competitive with those salary increases. So what we're looking at now is really trying to train and give the professional development to our existing computer science and IT faculty that maybe do not have the background in cybersecurity, but if we were to give those type of training experiences, certification, they could actually start that foundational work with actually providing that to our students. And then that way, giving yet the students some exposure to this area. We are working, like Thayer said, it takes a lot of partnership with your higher administration, where you're arguing for those higher salaries. Here at Delaware State University, we are a union school, so that presents yet another challenge. So how do you dictate those higher salaries for certain disciplines that really, that's the industry is actually forcing that requirement for those increased salaries for those professionals. So that's what we're experiencing here, and that's what we have looked at. How can we mitigate this? And we've looked to just really training our existing faculty members in these areas of cybersecurity.
Thank you. Yes. So you touched on the other kind of elephant in the room here about retention. When we talk about these jobs for our students, these are jobs for everybody, right? So it's just this competitive nature of folks out here who are looking at these jobs as well. So I do understand, yeah, that's quite a bit of a challenge. So I ask you all, when my colleagues here, how can we combat this? How important can we get more private institutional investment in supporting our schools, our students, our faculty? I know there's always people talk about public-private partnerships, and that's important for us too at CEDI. We had a lot of interest, and we have, private interests, but sometimes executing on that interest can be a little challenging. So I don't know if anyone wants to share where they're at and what kind of support they're getting. I heard a little bit of it from private industry, but is there any other resources of support? If you want to just throw it out there and say, you know what, CEDI, if you can make this X, Y, and Z happen, that will really help us move the needle. So we have NSA here, so they're hearing, right? We have the CAE community here, they're listening, right? As well as people who tune in who want to support our schools. They want to support the MSIs. They want to support HBCUs. So what would you ask? I'm going to start with you, Dr. Winstead, because I ended with you. So I'm going to start with you.
So you've touched on one of my loves in academia, which is academic and corporate partnerships. And I have seen this really really bear fruit with our students. So a number of our industry partners had invested in this area of cybersecurity when they actually sponsored the student co-curricular experiences like the hackathons, the boot camps. We've had Amazon. I don't know if you name the corporate partners, but we've had Amazon and we've had Microsoft as well. They've come in and because this is an investment that they're seeking to get their future professionals in these areas. And so the earlier that they can get exposure to these students in these areas, the better. So they have actually sponsored a number of our student events in these areas. And the students absolutely love it. They love case competitions. They love that competitive atmosphere where it's a time crunch. We have to get a solution to this problem, because that's essentially what's happening on the cybersecurity side, right? These are persons that are out there to do more harm than good, but we have to be just as equally as trained in these areas as they are, right? So if not more, so that we can prevent that from occurring. So I think that is one area that I've seen a number of industry sponsorship actually bear a lot of fruit, is their ability to give what we call the hands-on applications, the industry perspective. What does this look like in real time? And so that's what our students may complain about, is that in the classroom, it becomes more theoretical, but then what they really need to see is what this looks like on a day-to-day basis in industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, kind of bridging that theoretical to practical knowledge transfer is really so important. So absolutely. Glad you got some support there. What about you, Dr. Segura? I'm going to go with you next.
Well, we, like my colleague just said, we get some support, via, like she said, these hackathons and events, like such things like Battle of the Brains and so forth, where our students compete with other HBCUs. And our students fare very well, against other schools, by us being one of the smaller HBCUs, MSI. We don't get that corporate or private eye. They look over us because we're one of the smaller ones. And I don't know if they don't see a good investment because we're a smaller school, even though we have high quality students. So we like that support from corporations. Even though our students compete with the schools that they do support, we like that support.
Right. So that's interesting you state that. It's almost like, we have to get together and, build and form consortiums so we have a pipeline faculty that we can borrow from each other. Many of our schools are not far from each other. I know when I went to Southern University of New Orleans, Dillard was down the street, right? Right? And Xavier was up the street, right? So we have these schools that are together, and we really need to just get over sometimes the politics and build these consortiums so we can support each other in the faculty, can support resources that we can lean in on each other. I know it's easier said than done, right? I know this. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I got Howard University down the street, but I also got University of District of Columbia, who is like, we need the support too, right? You know, so we got, and you got Eastern, right? Maryland, right? You got Eastern Shore, right? So there's this competition, and at the end of the day, it's our community that suffers, really. So we have to figure out how can we power through these divides and these, you know, all types of, you know, political hangups, and really just lean in on each other. And if, you know, you're saying Dillard's just not getting that corporate attention, that we need to amplify that as a community to make sure Dillard gets that corporate attention and corporate investment. What do you have to say, Dr. Dunn?
Well, I believe you've hit the nail on the head in terms of that. And there have been discussions started of developing the HBCUs, developing essentially their own ecosystem in terms of producing those HBCUs that have doctoral programs, producing scientists and engineers, which then go back to the various other HBCUs that do not have PhD programs in teaching. And so essentially the schools that don't have the doctoral programs would feed into the HBCUs that do have doctoral programs, and those schools would therefore produce faculty, high quality faculty, then go back, because it's kind of a teach your own, grow your own. And so if you have someone who have been, say, at Dillard or been at Dell State or been at UMES, go off, get their PhD at another HBCU, but they're more likely to come back understanding and knowing it's more of giving back to that next generation and developing the students that will replace me one day when I retire. And so much, not so much about the money, even though money's still important though. Let me not leave that out, but to give up some of those dollars to go back for more of a purpose, a defined purpose of educating that next generation. So those conversations start to happen, particularly being driven by the group of HBCU engineering colleges that operate under umbrella AMI, Advanced Minority Interests in Engineering, to develop such an ecosystem to produce the faculty, because we are having such a hard time, as my dean colleague from Dell State, bringing individuals in, and they stay a little while, then they move on to bigger, quote unquote, bigger and better things. So there are some strategies, and so those, as you put it, political walls are starting to be dropped, and we're trying to look at, we need to work together and develop together if we're going to really continue to survive in these more areas that are more challenging, but also more costly in terms of staffing and developing.
This is wonderful. So that really, the program you stated there, talking about doctoral programs and other schools that don't have those curricula programs built in, and can lean on those schools and lean on those fresh faculty, right, coming out of the door to help support the other schools. I think that's a huge program there. I would love to see that replicated across the communities within the HBCU community. I don't know, this is the first I'm hearing it. I don't know what other HBCU groups of schools are doing something like that. So my hat, commend you on that, on those programs there. That's excellent. So the thing is that what we try to do at CEDI is we try to meet schools where they are. When we first started, when we was awarded the grant, and we worked with our consortium of schools, we had 9 schools that were part of our sub-awardees. They were quick to say, oh, I got this cryptography class. I'm going to, provide all these resources for free. Of course it's free, it's paid for by the government, but they were going to provide all these resources. And we said, wait, time out. First, we need to hear from the schools what they need. We can't sit there and be presumptuous and think we know what they need. We need to hear from the schools what they need. So this is really what's important for us to listen first and then build our program around the needs. Some of the schools we talked to, they said, you know what? We have no computer science program. We don't even have a networking program. We are a small liberal arts college, and we are really strong here, this law program. So guess what? We did something with that and built a cyber law program. We actually teamed them up with one of our schools. So Dr. Hayajneh is going to talk more about that, more how we listened first. That's the first thing we did. And then we built our services around the needs of the schools. So I'm going to let Dr. Hayajneh talk more about what we're able to accomplish. He talked a little bit in the beginning. I don't know if you caught it, but I would love for him to elaborate a little bit more on what we were able to accomplish in just this little over 2 years, right, that we have CEDI. So yes, Dr. Hayajneh.
Thank you, Dr. Estwick, again. So in order for us to address the challenges and the lack of resources, faculty, and students, as Amelia mentioned, we try to tailor CEDI services to the needs of the MSIs. We don't want to have one size fit all. This is a complaint we received from many of the MSIs that we met with, is that they are just invited to, for example, to a cloud security workshop for their students or faculty, but even they don't have a cloud course yet to develop a cloud security curriculum for the students. So what we try to do really is to tailor a service that's specifically designed for each MSI or each group that we work with. So we categorize CEDI services into 5 different areas. We started with the faculty development. So our partners, they try to do a face-to-face or virtual either workshops or boot camps for faculty from MSIs, and either one MSI or they actually invite a few MSIs, they share a challenge between them. So as Amelia mentioned, one of the recent workshops was for MSIs that want to develop a cybersecurity program under a criminal justice program, which is totally different than how you do it under computer science. The new trend we found recently is that many of the schools, not only MSIs, are hosting their cybersecurity under business school. So the focus there is also different. They're not that much interested in advanced cryptography or malware detection. Their interest could be more towards risk management, blockchain, and other topics that are more suitable to business students. So faculty development is one of the things we try to add, is to bring faculty from different disciplines, different areas into cybersecurity, to provide them with the material that they will need to use for their teaching, including the hands-on, the labs, the lecturing, and all the material. We even assisted them to hire an adjunct for a semester or 2 in some cases. Some of these institutions complained that when they try to hire an adjunct, other institutions will pay double that rate that they usually pay. So we tried through the funding we have to hire those adjuncts, qualified adjuncts for some of the smaller MSIs. Another CEDI service that we try to provide is the student development. Similar to the faculty, we also try to do many of the cyber competitions, capture the flag. These are essential components for teaching in cybersecurity. We also invite students from MSIs to workshops, to opportunities to develop their skills, hands-on, small boot camps over a weekend, over a week, extensive workshop or a boot camp, help them with internships and other kind of opportunities for the students. Another CEDI service was the curriculum development. We noticed many of the MSIs, they lacked the support to develop their curriculum to meet a specific standard. For example, the faculty we hire to help MSIs, they try to boost their curriculum and try to bring them closer to the CAE requirements. Although we don't want them to be a CAE now, we will be happy to have them to become a CAE, but we don't want to overwhelm them by all the requirements of becoming a CAE. So at least if if that person we hire to help the MSI can at least revise one or two of their courses, reshape their program, reshape their certificate program to meet the standards, that will be very helpful for them, especially if they are doing that in the beginning. It's much easier to change a program while it's in the design process to meet the NICE framework and the CEDI knowledge units requirements as well. We also try to hire mentors and advisors for MSIs to guide them, to help them. We noticed some of the MSIs that recently received some funding for a capacity building, for example, or other type of funding. They're struggling even how to build labs, how to improve, to use that funding to improve their existing program or curriculum, and how to add hands-on. What type of material should they request? Other than just laptops and desktops, what other type of material? You'll be surprised, we just hired 2 or 3 people from CAE community just to help support that establishment of a new lab support. Even when we provided money to establish a lab, there was an issue of what type of support, what type of lab, what type of equipment they should purchase. Last but not least, we also try to help MSIs sign articulation agreement with other institutions. If you don't have the capability right now to build a graduate program, for example, you could bridge your students 2 to 4 institution from 2-year college to 4-year college, or 4+1 program. They work with other institutions in their area to bridge their students to that graduate program. At least 3 or 4 articulation agreements were funded and supported by the CEDI program. Now, again, we're not really fixed. We're very flexible when it comes to the type of support. We're open to new ideas. Just an example, we supported high school students that bridged to HBCUs. I think in Kentucky was that example. So we did support, we went beyond what we do usually. And recently, starting from this year, we actually extended our study support. We noticed many of the institutions, they have the lack of hardware and software and equipment and VMware and Raspberry Pis to use in their labs. So we extended study support anywhere between $15,000 to $30,000 per institution to help them boost their existing infrastructure, add those hands-on labs and exercises to their curriculum. And that was based on the request we received from many of the MSIs that we met with. So these are just some of the samples, and some of the panelists here, your institutions have received actually some of the CEDI service. So we're always open, as I mentioned, we like to tailor our service, and we're always open to any requests or challenges that you may need. And we try to help as much as possible with these services. Thank you. Amelia, the mic is back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hayajneh. So as we stated before, we have been quite successful really working with the schools. This is not something we do as superficial. This is intentional work that we are working not only with our subawardees, but helping them enable the subawardees to support the schools where they're at. And Dr. Hayajneh gave great examples on how we're doing that. So I asked our panelists, our CEDI program received a no-cost extension. It actually ends in September of this year. We still have funds on the books to support schools. I want to get that out there. And really, it's first come, first serve to support schools. So to my panelists, if you can name one, I know there's all kinds of challenges, right? But if you can name one that you say, you know what, if CEDI can help us with this, that will move the needle for us, and we're able to do, subsequent things. So I'm gonna go with Dr. Segura on this one first, because I feel like you was always in the middle. I'm always asking you after. So I'm letting you have this first one.
And I think you picked me too, because I'm also an alum of Southern University at New Orleans as well. So yes. I think if it could be something like absolutely right now would be funding for equipment and training. And so that can exist with what we have now in place. It can get our foot in the door and get started. And I think that would help, like I say, a good idea is like like in trainer, faculty and residents. Have that faculty go and learn and bring it back to the other faculty. And also have the equipment to offer that class right away. Because you can get that training, but if you don't have the equipment or the stuff to use it, that knowledge goes right back out the door. You have to start all over again.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And we're taking notes. Thank you. We'll be following up with you on that. I appreciate you sharing that. Dr. Winstead, what is your this will move the needle? I need it right now.
Well, I know all my faculty will say everything, but I would say infrastructure wise, we really need the infrastructure. So we need funds that enable our departments to kind of create that space, so renovation funds, I'm not quite sure if there's any restrictions regarding that, but there's renovation funds so that we can create those computing spaces. Also, funding that will allow the purchase of the software, the technology that the students need. So I agree with Dennis with that. As well as, that application of having that person that's sitting in the classroom. So I do understand, we actually benefited from that with our Capture the Flag event that we had a few years ago, where you actually have those subject matter experts come in and sit in the classroom and give that industry perspective of the subject matter experts for those students in that area. So I think the curriculum development is one thing that even when I spoke to the chair of that department is still something that we need further assistance with, is the curriculum development, having it be CAE inspired, CAE inspired curriculum is what we really need, so that we're starting off on the right path. It's really right in the vein of what we're supposed to be doing. That's what I would ask for.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love that, CAE inspired. I love that, because what we found talking to some of the schools is they said, oh yeah, we hired a consultant or something like that to create this cybersecurity program for us. And then what we've done is we had them send over the curricula, and we looked at it, and for CAE designation, it has to map to the NICE knowledge units. And when we said, oh, okay, so you can get those services from the community for free. You didn't have to hire a consultant, number one. So sometimes it's the awareness factor. Our schools don't even understand it. They're so quick to just hire somebody to come in. And unfortunately, that's probably not the best situation for them, because these resources are there for them to see for themselves, and they're free. And then we tell them, well, let's look at that. We get the program information, we have someone evaluate it from the CAE community, and it doesn't map to any of the knowledge units. So now we explain to the schools, you have to, in order to build that foundation to be CAE designated, so you're going from CAE inspired to CAE designated, your courses have to map to the knowledge units. And they said, like, what? And I was heartbroken talking to the school, because I really felt, I'm like, man, those are resources they could have reallocated somewhere else, but yet, they got a consultant to come in. And I understand, you have to create something. I know the pressure cooker of a faculty member. I understand that. But, it was just really heartbreaking. So curricula, advisement, and mentorship is really something that, I think is strongly, thank you for emphasizing, because this is where we saw a lot of need as well from the schools that we talked to. Dr. Dunn, I'm giving you your opportunity. You got one. We got money on the table. What are you taking?
Well, what I would like to see is leveraging your resources to help bring in industry partners, R1 schools, and HBCUs and MSIs to develop long-term partnerships to really move this needle in terms of the various issues that we discussed here today. I mentioned earlier, a corporation that has developed a long-term relationship with us. They've already moved the needle in terms of our abilities to deliver cybersecurity programs. So what I would suggest some type of summit where we bring key industry individuals who really want to move that needle, all ones who want to move that needle, and then the HBCUs, from the small ones, as my good friend here at Dillard, to the larger ones, my good colleague at Dell State, and see how we can all work together and move this needle in terms of this area of cybersecurity and education, future education of individuals in the cybersecurity space.
Absolutely, that is wonderful. Thank you. And we're taking notes, trust me. So this is really gems that you all are giving us so we can alert our resources and our pipelines, right, to help build a stronger pipeline. That's what we're here for. We're just a conduit to make this all work for our MSI community. So I got a quick couple of questions. I know we had two schools on the panel, Dillard and Delaware State, that were able to take advantage of some of CEDI services. I don't know if you want to speak on that. We're always looking for testimonials on how CEDI is doing. So if you have any information that goes for, Dillard and Delaware State on what you all were able to work with our subawardees on. I don't know, Dr. Winstead?
Yes. So I kind of spoke to a little bit in my last response, but so we really took advantage of CEDI's Capture the Flag. And it was really phenomenal because we have here at Delaware State University, we do have an early college high school. And that now it's just from the early college school because we actually service middle school students as well. And so in the Capture the Flag, though, that we hosted with CEDI, it was the early college students, so students from local school districts also participated. As I spoke about before, the hackathons are really popular here. The students absolutely love it. We had I think our last hackathon that was this past fall was really attendance of over 100 students in these areas of data science, computer science. And they stayed up for 24 hours to create a solution to a problem that was in this area of cybersecurity. So in this case, the event that we had with CEDI was it was a gaming learning experience. And so it was titled, let's make sure we get the title right, Gamified Learning Experience with Security Offense. So it was like a game of defense and offense, and the students really loved it. It started with a prep period of the students where for 4 days, we had a subject matter expert from CEDI come and sit in the classroom for 4 days. And then they kind of prepped the students for what they were going to see. And then and it was a combination of a community college. There was, of course, the local school district, Delaware State University, and Wilmington University. So within the state of Delaware, we had a number of institutions represented, and it created that interconnectivity, really kind of feeding on everyone's, advantages of each institution. But the one thing that I feel like a number of the faculty loved about that experience was being able to grow in this area of cybersecurity together, and also creating that fun experience. The students are actually learning, but they're learning about cybersecurity, and one that is actually exposing younger students, and then they get the mentorship of the older students at the college level about what this looks like. So you're kind of creating that pipeline at the same time of having an outreach activity. And like I said, it was a layered mentorship, and then also faculty development, because the faculty members were involved in that training. So that's one that I would highlight that, just bared a lot of fruit, and it really kind of set the stage for a number of our hackathon activities since.
Well, that's wonderful for us to hear. Thank you so much for that feedback. I know the University of Tennessee, who actually worked on this with you all, really did a lot of work in this area of hackathons. We had a couple of other schools too that really was fascinated about, how to build out ranges, cyber ranges for our students to really get that practical knowledge. So it's really good to hear that you were able to benefit, the students were able to benefit for that opportunity. So thank you for sharing. I think we also had Dr. Dunn. You also, right? I think you're, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's Dillard, Dr. Segur, I apologize. You also were able to take advantage of our CTF, I think, opportunity. Is that correct?
Yes, we did. We had two opportunities. The first opportunity was basically some professional development with UTC. We with attending workshops, learning more about cybersecurity and secure shell scripting and so forth. And it was attended both by faculty and by students. And so that was a great opportunity because again, it's introducing something new to our environment, to our community, and getting us more aware of what is needed and out there. And also my chair, Dr. Chu, he been working with UTC about our curriculum revising. You know, looking at what do we have, what do we need to change, what is our strengths, what is our weakness, and preparing us for, you know, the future of technology, especially cybersecurity, and what we need to have that foundation and infrastructure that's needed to either offer cybersecurity classes, a minor, or even a full degree in cybersecurity. So those two opportunity was a great help to open our eyes to see, you know, what foundation, what do we need to move forward in this opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your feedback. So I want to make a slight correction because I want to make sure our subawardees get the credit they deserve. I believe Tennessee Tech actually worked with Delaware State, and University of Tennessee of Chattanooga worked with Dillard. So I want to, both of Tennessee's there, I wanted to make sure I corrected which schools partnered with you all. So this is great for us to hear. When CEDI first was awarded, this was in 2020. So we all know what happened in 2020, right? The pandemic hit. And, you know, rightfully, unfortunately, you know, the world stopped. And, you know, for us, it was a really slow start. A lot of our schools were just trying to figure it out. You talk about that infrastructure. I know all of you it really hit home when the pandemic hit of how important infrastructure is, and not having the resources to support infrastructure, just how challenging that was. I think anybody, if anything, right, one of the lessons learned from the pandemic is understanding where we at as an educated society, right? How much resources are we really pouring into our schools, or the lack thereof, right? You started seeing what schools were able to ramp up in hybrid models, and some schools were not able to ramp up so quickly, right? So this is really just such a stark contrast, and it speaks to the inequities, unfortunately, we have in our community. So this is what CEDI is all about. We're trying to just level the playing field, at least help move the needle to level the playing field, in addition to making sure our students are ready for the future. So before we get to questions, I have just one more, before we get to audience questions, I just have one more to really all our panelists. This is even going to go to you, Ms. Weathers, as well, because I want you all to think about the future of cybersecurity education. Where do we see it? There's so much discussion now of artificial intelligence. We talk about drone security. Look, we have a war going on, and they're using drones, right, to attack each other, right, over in Russia and the Ukraine. Where do we see cybersecurity education going? We talk about, I made a reference to cyber law before, that there's so many other fields that are, I want to say, tangential to cybersecurity that are just as important, right? We talk about healthcare, all of that. where do you see cybersecurity education going? Because this is important for us to think about the future, how we can start building those educational programs or that curricula today. So maybe you say, you know what, Amelia, we're going to look at, autonomous vehicles and cybersecurity in that. We're going to take it to a whole nother, right? So that's forward thinking. So where do you see cyber education going? Ms. Weathers, I'm going to let you have the stab at this first, because of course, with NSA's support and with NSA's investment and the CAE investment in education, would like to give your thoughts on where you're thinking. And this, it doesn't mean that you're supporting it. It just means that you're helping to enable building out this future model of how we see cybersecurity education.
I think it's I don't know, never ending. It seems like it's more and more. There's so many different newer technologies coming in that it's getting harder and harder to just keep up with the different things that we need to learn and teach in cybersecurity. One of the things, I guess, just recently off the top of my head that we've talked about is, you mentioned it, the healthcare. We're in our symposium in, I think it's in June or September. That's going to be one of the cyber games, is hack the hospital. So that's one of the things that's been a topic of discussion, as well as what you mentioned earlier, cyber law. So I don't know. Just keeping up with all the technology has been a challenge, especially for us at NSA. One of the other things that I've heard lots of comments about around NSA is more and more people are teleworking, and so just being able to provide that privacy and educate workers in cybersecurity to protect our information. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for saying that. We completely changed our work dynamic because of the pandemic. Completely changed it. Before, when there was never a thought to work remotely, especially at a place like the National Security Agency where I used to work, right? There was never a thought that you'd even do some of these work roles from remote locations. And guess what? We realized in the pandemic, we have to continue. We have to continue as a nation. We can't, completely shut down. There are still vital industries that have to keep going. That's pretty much the bedrock of this society. And those folks had to go in either in person or had to take it remote. We have to continue doing our jobs. So absolutely, thank you for talking about that. I don't know if any other panelists want to add in their remarks about the future of cybersecurity education, or maybe they want to share something that they missed earlier that we discussed that they want to get a viewpoint in. Want to make sure we do that before we go to any questions. Any other panelists want to add in their thoughts?
Well, I just want to say with the Internet of Things, OIT, or I call it Internet of Everything, cybersecurity is going to be touch all areas of our lives. And so it's going to be very important that we be flexible and nimble in terms of the type of individuals we train. I have been to seminars where you see cyber hacks affecting construction projects. As you mentioned, cyber hacks affecting drones. As we all know, cyber hacks affecting our critical infrastructure, i.e. the colonial pipeline. So as we become more and more interconnected, as Ms. Weathers said, for working at home, cybersecurity is going to be everywhere. So it's going to be a continuing growing field. And as I mentioned, we're going to need to make sure we're educating individuals who are multifaceted in the type of training and knowledge they have to deal with the future kind of cyber breaches that we may be encountering.
Absolutely. Oh man, Dr. Dunn. IoT, Internet of Things. We just completely exponentially increased our attack surface. With all these additional devices interconnected on the internet, communicating with all kinds of other devices, we just increased our attack surface. So now we need folks to understand that. How do we combat against that? How can we protect ourselves against that? Whoever thought we needed a refrigerator connected to the internet? But here we are, because we love convenience, we have to have everything connected. When I come home from a long day's work, if I'm working away out the house, or while I'm home, I tend to want everything done for me before I get up from my chair. So it's this urge, this need for convenience now. We've created all of these things connected to the internet. So in critical infrastructures, I cannot stress enough, those are vital functions in our society we have to protect. This gets to my earlier statement where I said it's a national imperative. It is. It's a national imperative. We have workforce enabled to protect our water supply, our electric grid, our transportation, our finance, all of that, right? All of that. And don't forget all of our critical industries, right? That deals with what we call defense industries, right? Ms. Weathers knows quite well at NSA, but all the defense industries, right? And those defensive, other companies that supports the defense industries, right? Are, airlines and all the other things now that we have to think about. Drones now is part of FAA, right? We have a Space Force. We have another agency. We have the Space Force. So, I mean, these are so much that our students can get involved with the information and the knowledge that they learn from their institutions. Okay, before we move on to questions, thank you so much for your input. Anyone else from the panel before we move into questions? We got a couple more minutes.
I just wanted to add, I think that one thing that I know that I've spoken with a number of my colleagues across the HBCU community in the 1890s is creating this space of an innovation ecosystem. I know we kind of spoke about this a little bit earlier, but creating that space for entrepreneurship for these students in these spaces. So one thing I know that the students really did love, even going past just the hackathon experience with practical applications that's industry inspired, but at the end of these events, having some type of prototype that, it kind of hits on your last question with where do we see it going? And I really do see that cybersecurity is going into that area of emerging technologies. What does that look like moving forward? What are those new technologies? What will they be? And then where are our students in the creation of these emerging technologies? And then how do they own their space in these places? So, whether it's hardware, whether it's a software program, having our students really experience not so much just learning it, but now applying it and then now owning the space of emerging technologies as we move forward.
Wow, absolutely. Emerging technologies. The first thing I was thinking about is how real these deep fakes have gotten, right? So we have these deep fakes now that, again, it's software, but they take on the imagination and the look and feel of real people, right? And we've seen examples of some of these deep fakes on how, someone wants to hack into them and someone speaks something that could set off war or set off, some type of panic or something, right? It just bogs my brain of, again, all the different attack vectors based on just emerging technologies and Internet of Things and so on and so forth. So thank you all again for your comments. Real quick, we got a couple of questions here. We have one from Mr. Gray. It says, won't transformation of the electric grid, electric vehicles, communications all have cyber associated risks? Absolutely. I don't know if anyone wants to take and expound on that question. I think it kind of leads into what we already been discussing about cyber risk, right? And understanding that attack vector. And when you have all these emerging technologies and all of these Internet of Things, right, coming all together on one internet. There's no different internet. There's one internet, right? It becomes a breeding ground of risk. And I think moving into each of the schools have to think about that. When they went into the pandemic and had to do this hybrid, you know, sort of first remote and then hybrid, they have to understand the risk, right, that can come into their enterprise, right, of students who are not practicing good cyber hygiene, right? We've had schools that were hacked. We had schools that were ransomware, right? And education continues to be one of the top 3 ransomed industries now, behind, of course, healthcare and finance. Okay, so education is up there as well. So absolutely, Mr. Gray. He had 2 questions here. Talked about the rapidly changing dynamic of cyber tech. Could professors and interns be more effectively placed inside companies for exposure, then bring back learned lessons and curricula into the academic setting? So it sounds like he has a question, then he's making a statement. I don't know if anyone had any particular comments to this question about professors and interns being more effectively placed inside companies for exposure and bringing that knowledge back. I thought I heard some examples of that, but I don't know if anyone wants to speak on that. Dr. Segura?
Yeah, I'll speak. And I brought that up earlier about, again, having some type of faculty in residency program where faculty over the summer may go to a company and learn more about cybersecurity, and then come back and bring it back to colleagues or back to the classroom. And they help us prepare our students for what industry is looking for and give us a good idea of how to, you know, map our classes and design everything that we need to make sure we meet the market needs.
This is great. Absolutely. I think it comes down to finding we talked about this, right? The private, public and private partnerships to actually provide those opportunities for our schools and to help us grow, and not only grow, but even in some cases help us build the pipeline so we can have a recurring set of students, and the companies are invested in making sure they have a solid pipeline for these type of opportunities. I think that's a big one there. There is a question also about how can folks get involved with CEDI and request CEDI services. I do believe we're going to put a link in the chat. If not, that information will go out. But if you go to the Fordham CEDI website, you can just Google Fordham Cybersecurity Education Diversity Initiative. You'll see our website, and it will have information on there on how you can apply for CEDI services. There's also quite a bit of information on resources. So I stated before about free resources surrounding that's coming out of the Centers of Academic Excellence program, resources to help you understand how to even start building a cybersecurity program. How do you request information on different opportunities? We have the Insight program. That's one of our, thank you for putting that link in there. That's one of our partners as well. Insight offers all kinds of resources. You don't have to be part of the CAE community to benefit from those resources. And there's also the NICE website. We talked about the knowledge units. NICE has information on there so you understand the various federal programs around that's being supported throughout from the NICE initiative, which is the National Institute of Cybersecurity Education. And then, of course, there's other resources that's being populated here in the chat from the National Science Foundation, the DoD. All of these resources are there for you to take advantage of. Again, I will be remiss if I didn't plug CEDI again and let you all know there's funds available. I feel like having a megaphone. Funds available, first come, first serve, right, till September. We are working hard to see if we can possibly extend these resources. But, that's, we're working with, of course, the climate of budget and such with the federal government. So we're really hoping we can extend. I want to thank all of our panelists today, Dr. Dunn, Dr. Cherese, Dr. Winstead, and Ms. Weathers, and of course, Dr. Hayajneh, my co-chair, for joining us and speaking on this and really being just transparent of what the needs are for your schools and what the challenges are and how CEDI can help support you and, partner with you. Our main goal is really just to make sure everyone succeeds and get all the resources that are available to them in building, growing, and sustaining a cybersecurity education. I would thank, of course, Rutgers Center of Minority Serving Institutions, Rutgers MSIs Center, for hosting us today. Thank you, Mary Beth Gusman, for having us and for getting the right folks in the room to have this conversation. A lot of times, when we have these discussions, we don't really get the support, to amplify these topics. So thank you so much, Mary Beth, for supporting us here. And Rutgers is a partner with us. Rutgers is also a center of academic excellence as well as Fordham University. So really excited to have this opportunity. There's a couple of minutes. I don't know if anyone else had any last minute comments before we close out the session.
Amelia, I just want to say thank you to everyone. This was really, really interesting, and especially thank you to our friends from across the 3 HBCUs for joining us. I know how busy you are, and just want to say thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out to join us, because your expertise is incredibly important and valuable, and I'm hoping some good things will come out of this session. And we are recording the session, so once you get your copy, please send it out to lots of people so that they can learn more about these important issues. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hayajneh, did you have any closing remarks from CEDI?
I just want to thank you all again for your support and your help and your participation. And we're really hopeful to continue with CEDI and improving our services and our program as we work on. And again, cybersecurity is becoming more and more diverse in terms of educational background. In the past, people used to think of cyber as a discipline under computer science. Now we look at cyber itself as a discipline, and under cyber you could have law, intelligence, management, of course, computer science and engineering as well. So we were hopeful to extend our CEDI services and to continue providing them, improve them as we see the need, and work more and more towards serving more and more MSIs. I have shared in the chat. Shared in the chat a heat map where shows some of the institutions that we have served, or most of them, and we're hopeful to extend that map and include the entire list of all MSIs in our nation. And thank you all, and thank you, Amelia, for your wonderful lead for this panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to work with an equally passionate individual, as I have in my co-chair, Dr. Hayajneh. It's been an absolute pleasure to really build this program, and of course, reaching out and supporting all the schools that we have supported, which is about 100 schools so far that we've supported, and we're still counting. We're going to be counting to the last day. So again, I urge all of you to get the word out. Please go to our website, apply. We are here to support you, okay? We are here to support you. I want to thank you for taking the time to spend with us today. I know this was 90 minutes, right? Most of the time we try to get webinars under an hour, but we had so much information that we wanted to share with you all that we made this 90 minutes. So thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you all. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, friends.